Right, hello everyone. Welcome to this Develop Conference panel, Northern Lights. Well done, you've made it to the end of the day, well done. I'm Jamie Sefton, I'm Managing Director of Game Republic, and if you don't know about Game Republic, we're basically a Yorkshire and Northern England games business network with more than 1,000 developer members, affiliates, and 17 universities and colleges. And we host events in the region with the likes of Epic and Nintendo, Sony, Idea, Xbox, Twitch, and more. And we basically help companies with biz dev, essential introductions to investors, platform holders, and publishers. Today's panel is a celebration of the fact that we're 20 years old. It's our 20th anniversary this year. So as well as celebrating that, we're here to discuss the past, the present, and future of the games industry. And it's not just going to be about Yorkshire and the North. We're also going to talk about essential advice on investment, starting a company and stuff like that. So it's going to be some really useful advice. And we have a fantastic panel with some of the leading lights from our region. We'll quickly hear from each of them now just to explain who they are. So we'll start with you, Bobby.
Thank you, Jamie. Hi, my name is Thandi. I'm the founder and CEO of Kite Games. We're a game studio focused on virtual reality and augmented reality. We're headquartered in Leeds and we also have a studio in Christchurch.
Cool. Did everyone hear that? Was it? Oh, okay. You might have to just shout a lot, sure. Bobby.
Hi, my name is Bobby Thandi. I'm the founder and CEO of Kite Games. We're a game studio focused on virtual reality and augmented reality. We're headquartered in Leeds, here in England, as well as having a studio in Christchurch.
Hi, I'm Elaine, Dowman. Oh, my mic is loud. And I head up a team at Barclays that works with the games and creative industries. We do a lot more than banking with games businesses, do a lot of work with indie and games businesses starting out, and we've been members of Game Republic for almost 4 years.
Good stuff. Simon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Iwaniszak. I'm the studio director at Red Kite. We're also based in Leeds, and we're focused on AAA game development, PC console. We've been around for just under 12 years now, and we're part of the Simo Digital family of studios now.
Cool. Jess?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jess. I've been in the games industry since 2008. I've primarily been working in production, working my way through all that fun stuff, project managing, and this year is the first year that I've set up a new studio called One Punch Games.
Brilliant. And Andrew?
Yeah, I'm Andrew, and I set up a one-person company called Thunkd, again, in Leeds. I also started a thing called Gamio, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later on. That's Game Makers Yorkshire, and I run a networking event called Leeds Games Task. Brilliant.
Right, I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to probably chat for about 25, 30 minutes, and then we're going to come to you in the audience. So if you think of any questions, just keep them to the end, and then we'll ask questions in about 25, 30 minutes. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is about the sort of change that we've seen in the games industry. I mean, it's changed in the last 4 to 5 years, never mind the last 20 years. But I'd like to come to Andrew first, because you've obviously been making games for 25 years? 27. 27 years. And you've gone, worked on some fantastic platforms and Game Boy and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you've seen a lot of changes. What do you think is the most major change that you've seen over the last 20 years? Yeah, I mean, this isn't just in our region, but I think it's across the industry, just that access to publishers and especially platform holders. When I first started out, you couldn't talk to a platform holder like Sony unless you were with a publisher, and you probably couldn't talk to a publisher unless you had an agent. But all of those barriers have been broken down. And I think because we've got a really good community in Yorkshire, there's always an in where you can connect with someone. So yeah, I think that's the biggest change, just that access to people with money. Yeah. Bobby, you've set up your company, was it 10 years ago, 11 years?
Yeah, 5.5 years ago.
Right, okay. So, but you've been in the industry...
For over a decade.
Yeah, that's right. So what have you seen in the last sort of 10 years that you've really...
Sure, even actually going back just a little bit further than 20 years ago, if I look at our studio director, a gentleman called Jason McGann, who was a co-founder of Mobius Entertainment back in 1997. This then got acquired and became Rockstar Leeds in 2004. And if you actually look at what happened after that, it's actually amazing and fascinating. For example, Rockstar then birthed studios such as Double 11, headed up by Lee Hutchinson. Simon headed up Red Kite Games, but was at Rockstar Leeds. Other studios such as Weaseltron, Blast Furnace, Fierce Kaiju, which is a studio we ended up acquiring ourselves, Gentlemen of Science, and so on. And further, between Sumo and Team 17, numerous other studios have been birthed in the North region. So in short, the success of one studio can help birth other studios, which in turn help to create the brilliant ecosystem we currently have in the North right now.
I think that's it. And it's companies talking to each other. And if we have something that happens in the region that's quite traumatic, like when Blast Furnace closed down, you know, Activision came in, set up a state-of-the-art mobile studio. It closed down 18 months later. You know, we were there to help find people jobs, and new studios came out of that. I mean, Elaine, you know, at Barclays, you must have seen a lot of change as well. You deal with a lot of startups and new companies. You've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like for us, Barclays have been working with the creative industry since the 80s, but more focused on the games industry probably in the last 5 years. You know, we talk to a lot of indies, and obviously there's always a challenge with getting funding, but particularly at the moment, it is a little bit more of a challenging time at the moment. And again, we do a lot of work with kind of introducing people and seeing where we can kind of support with the building out people's networks as well.
Yeah. Jess, you've seen huge changes. You know, what's been the big thing for you that?
I think when I started, so I started at Team 17 all those years ago, and I think there was 2 other females at the company at the time that were active developers. There weren't. You know,
sorry, how many is it?
2.
Wow.
That were active developers. There was an artist and a designer, and then I joined in QA. Making 3. Yeah. Wow. So I think I'm going to refer to Gamio here as well, because that's really given me like a wider view of who is joining the industry, and over the years it's exploded, hasn't it, Gamio? And the amount of the newer generations coming through, the diversity of talent that's coming through, as it's great.
Yeah, it's so much nice to see people that, you know, don't look like me, both, you know, physically and who I represent, really. Simon, we've sort of been on a journey together, haven't we, since you left Rockstar Leeds? Of, was it 10, 11, 12 years ago or something, when you came out to your first GDC after that?
Yeah, so I mean, I joined Rockstar straight out of university around 2006, and I worked there for about 7 or 8 years before setting up Red Kite. But when I did set up Red Kite, I didn't have a big network of support or friends within the industry. It was very much about figuring out what I wanted to do as the business, and then reaching out and finding friendly people and like-minded people to help support. And you know, Jamie and Game Republic were one of those first encounters of that. And as Jamie says, you know, helping us get out to our first GDC, I was suddenly, you know, I think I'd started the business. It had been registered at Company's House for about 2 weeks, and then suddenly I was thrown out to San Francisco and speaking to game developers. And you know, I had development experience having worked at Rockstar, so it was good to be able to go and talk and have something to talk about. But it's very different when you're setting up your own business, and you know, having just that little bit of support and encouragement made a really big difference. And then, you know, coming back from that and having people then to be able to talk to and reach out to was just, you know, I always say, Jamie, I'm really pleased that Red Kite is a success story that has been part of the Game Republic journey as well. But it was super important, and I think something that when we're talking about the North and that support structure that we have is, I think that's one element of an excellent part of the North as a game development network and family.
Yeah. I think what's important as well, I mean, Gameo been mentioned, which is now part of Game Republic, and Gameo, like Game Republic, came from the developer community itself. You know, it wasn't like somebody from, you know, the council thought, oh, we need a game development kind of business network. It was the games companies themselves. I mean, Andrew, you set up Gameo, and, you know, is it really important that when networks are formed and things, they form kind of organically, really?
Yeah. How many people are, sorry, it's wrong time of day to do audience participation. How many people are sort of Yorkshire or above? All right, so most of you probably know about Gameo, but so there was this big boom around 2010, 11, where things like the App Store were opening up, Steam were opening up, and there were lots of opportunities for people to go out there and make their own games. And I just felt it was like a really good time to sort of reach out, bring people together. It was actually a fairly selfish thing, because at the time I was attempting to go solo, and I wanted to find people to work with and all those things. But as soon as it was out there, people just kind of started flocking towards it. And, you know, it was really good for me going out there, and I'd find these little companies that didn't know that there were other companies nearby, and they'd sort of come along and they'd introduce their friends and their networks to our network. And it just grew really quickly. And yeah, I think we're probably going to repeat ourselves a lot, but I think networks are the key to sort of success.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to touch upon that. I think networking and networks are just so important, aren't they, to companies? I mean, I've heard of just at, you know, Game Republic and Gameo, where so many jobs have been created and companies that are formed through networks, and, you know, not just here, but you know, there's obviously other networks around the UK as well, and it's just, I mean, Elaine, you must have seen, you know, on your travels around the UK, lots of, you know, different networks around. You know,
Absolutely.
we've got Scottish Games Network, who's
Yeah.
you know, we've got Brian here today, and Brian Baglow, and, you know, Colin's doing some brilliant work there as well, and Guildford and Leamington and stuff. But
absolutely, and that's one of the things when anyone kind of, you know, again, we're talking to a lot of small startup businesses and a lot of students as well, because we've got a lot of connections to our Eagle Labs, which are incubator spaces across the country, to the universities. And the advice that I'd always give to people is to get out to these events, get out and network, meet as many people as you can. It can be quite daunting. And like your first time even coming to develop, it's quite daunting because you think everybody knows each other and it's really hard to break in and talk. But we've all got one passion here, and it's games. And being able to just walk up to someone and kind of just start a conversation, you kind of push yourself to it. But the connections that you make off the back of that are incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby, obviously, in your role at the moment, you're going around the world and seeing a lot of businesses in the States and stuff. Are you know, do you hear that happening in other countries? Are there, you know, these networks and organisations like Game Republic and UK and that sort of thing in other parts of the world? Or are we particular in what we have here? Because I heard, like, you know, there was an Italian games meetup recently where, you know, and that's quite nascent. It's quite, you know, it hasn't really formed, you know, until quite recently.
Thinking back to my experience with yourself, Jamie, and Game Republic, when I was starting out, you were instrumental in helping introduce me to investors, other game development CEOs, game developer CEOs, and really helping on the network side. And coming to events at Gameo and Game Republic, you're really able to learn from world industry leaders, as in, you know, you can attract some really great names to these events, and it's brilliant to network with other local game development studios where we can share in your learnings, share in the pain of game development as well. But when going abroad, going to events like GDC and such, I'm not in tune with local events in LA or in San Francisco or Miami. So maybe it's unique to us, or I just haven't got into the local dev scene there.
Yeah. I mean, we talked briefly about startups there. I mean, Jess, you're just obviously starting your new company. How are you finding it? You know, what advice would you give to people setting up a new company?
Yeah, so it was an interesting time economically this year, probably, to start. And there has been actually, what I've seen, a lot of startups this year, which has been really nice to see, despite everything else that's going on. I think for me, I had a personal mission that I wanted to fulfill, And if I was to give any advice to anyone, it's just have that strong why you want to do something, that strong mission. And then once you understand really what you want to get out of your new business, it's a lot easier to then talk to people and convince others that they should come on this mission with you. Yeah.
I mean, Simon, when Red Kite started, did you have a vision about what you wanted to do with the company? Maybe not the types of games, but the kind of attitude and what you wanted to create?
Yeah, definitely. And it's similar to what you've just said there, is having a strong idea of what you're looking to achieve with Red Kite. But, certainly the majority of people in this room are part of games, and it's a creative, industry. And, the temptation is to go out there and go, well, I'm going to make a game. Red Kite didn't start out to make a game. We started out to build a service and build something that we could sell. And, our primary, business is still, work for hire, co-development, helping other publishers, platform holders, studios make their games. But that's what we did from the very, very outset. So we didn't get hung up on this idea of, well, we've got this game idea and we want to try and make it. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that we focused on going, well, no, we know what our strengths are. We know we can try and build something that is sellable, and that was our strategy. That was our focus. And we started building a team around that. And I think that was one of the keys to our success, was really figuring out that that's what we wanted to do and sticking to it. Another element to that was, along that journey very early on, is that you can get pulled in different directions in terms of work that does get offered to you. And when you're trying to get a business off the ground, sometimes, it's this temptation to take things that aren't necessarily where you would want to go. Yeah. If you do that and still manage to succeed, then that's great. But what we did was that we stayed resolute, and we were like, well, no, we're a game developer. That is what we want to do. We need to find somebody that wants to bring us in for those talents. And it took a while. We didn't get, our first gig really for the first 9 months of the business since starting the business, but we did, and that was then the springboard. So yeah, I think if there was any advice I would give, would be to whichever, whatever it is that you want to be within games and what you want your business to be, is like really focus on that and try and stay true to it as much as possible, because it's easy for that to get derailed, or for you to just not plan and take the time that's required, and not be, objective about what you're trying to do.
And have savings.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby, you're a dedicated VR studio, and you're called XR Games. Quite a few VR studios to bring in extra income streams. They work on other things and other industries and stuff. Have you been tempted by that? Are you kind of singularly focused on games?
Good question. Going back to the point about your why, have a strong why and have a clear mission. Our mission at XR Games is to create fun memories by reimagining play. So thinking back to when I was a kid, one of my favorite games was Bubble Bobble 2. Half the fun was the game itself. It's a beautiful game. It's great tight game loop, great game mechanics, beautiful visuals and graphics and sound effects. That was half the fun for me. The other half was me and my friend playing in real life and high-fiving each other when we succeeded, or playful punch in the ribs when they messed up. And when I first tried the Oculus Dev Kit, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be better than the cooperative gaming experience that I had as a kid, because now my friends are scattered around the globe. But when I tried the VR headset, and I could imagine my friends around the globe coming together for a multiplayer experience, but now we're inside the game. And it was then when I had the light bulb moment of, this is what I want to do for my game studio that I wish to set up. Because when I think back about Bubble Bobble 2, the experience that had, I have a big smile on my face, and it's great memories. And even thinking back to when Zelda just came out, a whole bunch of us took the day off work, and we enjoyed spending an entire day.
Quite a lot of us took the day off.
Indeed. So when I say by reimagining play, that VR is a new medium, so we're figuring out what's fun for this new medium. And when we're play testing our games, it's like, will this game, when players get hold of it, play it, and when they think back on the experience of playing our game, are they going to have a big smile on the face Are they going to be talking about fun memories? So by having that very clear mission, it's ensured that every game that we create lives up to that high standard and high value. And because we've succeeded in doing that so far, it means we've been able to stay in our virtual reality lane. And now it means, there are maybe 3 or 4 studios of our size. Like, we're over 100 people. Endreams is around 200, Resolution about 300. And I think it's because we've stayed in our lane, created great content, we've been able to continue with the VR industry.
Yeah. And from a different point of view, I mean, Andrew, you've got a company that you set up, and you've done lots of different projects, and you kind of how do you look at projects for Thunkd? I mean, obviously you make your own games. You made the magnificent Truffle Pigs, which is a fantastic metal detecting game. How do you decide what projects to make, and what's the kind of vision for Thunkd with what you do?
So I'm like a terrible business person. Thunkd is really I could call it a lifestyle business. So because I've been making games for so long, I reached a point where I'm not getting any younger. And if I wanted to make my own thing, then I just had to leap out and do it. Now I'm on that sort of difficult second project where I've got to figure out how to fund it. So I'd love to tell you that I'm making my own things all the time, but I'm sort of balancing that with work for hire, contract work. Yeah. I really didn't want to do it, but it's a tough time, and I can earn a few quid doing it, and that'll go back into the next project. And
I want to talk about this because I've only been here developed for a day, but I'm already hearing from a few people that it is really tough out there at the moment. Obviously, we're having a lot of successes and things as well in the industry, but it seems to be quite tough from sort of, publishers not being as generous as they were, and investors maybe. I mean, Bobby, you've done a lot of this kind of hunting around for investment. I'll come to you in a minute, Elaine, as well, and ask about, Barclays and looking for investment. But how have you found it? Because you've gone out there and got investment and VC investment and stuff. So how are you seeing it? Is it all right for you at the moment?
There's no shortage of money that investors need to deploy and spend. And I think the difficulty that's being created at the moment is that the investors are being very mindful of where they deploy their funds. Because, whereas before they may be happy to take a punt, now it's, they want to ensure that there is going to be return on their investment, and that it's not going to fail. And because of that, if you don't have a success story already, or a game that's done extremely well, or fantastic credentials that you can bank on, that is becoming harder and harder, it appears, from the conversations I'm having, to raise investment funding. And for those people who are finding it difficult, I remember back raising money in 2017 for a VR studio. I'd just gone past the hype cycle, and investors had got burnt. They deployed a lot of investment money. These game studios didn't deliver the returns the investors were expecting because the install base wasn't there. A lot of investors got burnt. So when I was raising investment, it kind of felt a little bit like it is right now from the conversations I'm having, where it's really difficult. And what enabled me to succeed in raising investment were a number of things. Again, I'd go back to your why. Like, why are you creating this studio? Do you have a compelling reason for doing this? And is your story going to resonate with investors? Because if you can tell them a compelling narrative, you're going to get their attention. Once you've hooked them with a great story, you also have to evidence to them that you've got a great team behind you. And for that, I always begin with what I call the Golden Triangle Foundation. So when I was going to building out XI Games, I had myself taking care of all things business. I had another friend taking things of all things creative, and another friend taking care of all things technical. And from this triangle of us three, we could build up the foundation of a studio and have the kind of team beneath them as well. But evidence in past success is so important when speaking to investors to raise investment for sure. But it's about your why and your story. Can you get across to investors this, that if they put the money into your studio, that you will succeed? And I just found out last week, actually, when I was raising money back in 2017, and before the investor gave some investment, he kind of did a background check on me with someone, and he told me the story, and he says, all I told them was that if you put your money into Bobby, he won't give up until he succeeds. I was like, thank you very much. So, make sure that every connection you ever have in the games industry, that it's a positive connection, that they understand what you're doing, they understand what your values are, your integrity, because you never know who may be lent on by an investor for a credit check.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Elaine, I mean, how are you seeing it at the moment?
I think, again, you know, when I talk about the smaller businesses starting out, sometimes it's really hard to know who are the investors that are going to be interested in your game based on the type of game that you have, and how do you get in contact with them. And you know, a lot of it we talk to people about is getting out, again, the networking side, but getting out to events. So at Barclays, we run events. So back in May, we had an event. We had like 96 game studios we invite in for free to exhibit. You know, we had about 600 people from the industry. Any opportunities you get to show a Gamma or the games dev days that you guys run as well up in Leeds, take up those opportunities, have a look around, see what's available. For the last few years at EGX, we look after we take the res stage. We don't get up and talk about Barclays. We invite studios to get up and actually talk to their future players, because you just don't know who's in the audience. You don't know who's attending. At our events, we've had Xbox, we've had PlayStation, we've had people who got investment in their game at the event. They were offered investment. Other people were asked to come pitch for publishers. So any opportunities you get to show your game, take them up, even though it might be a bit nerve-wracking. You mightn't be, you know, you mightn't be quite happy with the demo that you have. Apply for demo days as well. Again, you just don't know who's looking at those.
Yeah. Jess, are you looking for investment at the moment? You're going to talk to publishers, or are you going to
at the minute
bootstrap it yourself? Because that is obviously the easiest way to do it.
It's definitely something that I'm learning more about, educating myself more about. I'm not on a particularly strict timeline for it, and because I'm new to this whole business malarkey. Yeah. I'm just currently enjoying the journey. I've got my goals, but yes, eventually that is absolutely something that I'd like to be pursuing as well once I'm more confident in my options.
Yeah. Andrew, how are you finding it at the moment?
Like I said, it is quite tough right now. So yeah, without going into too many details, I'm just I started the company off by sort of squirreling away some money and having a little bit of a war chest so I could take a run at it. And I'm kind of back to square one in that I'm building up this amount of money that my girlfriend would really wish I'd spend on a kitchen or something, and it'll end up going on some game that like 2 people buy, but I'll enjoy doing that.
I think that's a good decision.
That's my thing.
But,
so.
you know. Fantastic. Simon, I'd like to ask you, because you were acquired by Sumo Digital, and what was that like? And that must have been a heck of a lot of work that went into being acquired, and all the kind of due diligence that went into that. You know, what was that whole experience like, and how long did it take from start to finish to get acquired?
So the whole process took about a year, which is it's the first time that I've ever had a business acquired. So actually, I don't know whether that's a long time or a short time, but it took about a year. And what I would say is that it's really disruptive, because you're doing all this work to build towards an acquisition, but you've also got to try and run your business as though it's not going to happen. So that's kind of quite an interesting time to be working through, because you're divided in terms of what you're trying to do. You've got your eye in 2 balls, so to speak, with that. And I mean, what I would say from again, I can only speak from Red Kite's experience, was that, so we weren't looking to be acquired. It came a little bit out of the blue. I felt it was almost like a bit of a conspiracy theory, because it was like February 2018, and within the space of 4 weeks, I'd had 4 companies get in touch with me asking whether Red Kite were up for being acquired, and I'm like, I'm not sure why this is happening, but all I can think
news
of.
Spreads on.
Well, I don't know. All I can think. Yeah, I think it must have been critical.
Selling is selling.
I think it must have been like some form of critical mass in terms of that. We'd been around for a period of time. We'd been doing good work. We were getting established. We were getting known throughout certainly the UK and the US to some degree of being a good partner to work with. So I saw it as just a the best compliment really was that this was happening. But we weren't looking. We hadn't put ourselves in any way, shape or form out there. But what I'd always made sure that I'd done with Red Kite was just run a very just professional outfit in terms of how we were set up. Even simple things you can think of, from legalities with your articles of association with the business, and these things that any business owner in here will know about, is again having all those structures and things like that in place, so that when that due diligence starts happening, is that it just makes that process easier, and also just provides a lot of credibility. Luckily with me, again, was just speaking from my experience, was that Sumo Digital were the company at the time that, and we'd been working with them for quite a while. We'd been working with each other for probably 6 years before they acquired us. So we knew each other inside out. I knew the owners very well. I knew what they were about. They knew what we were about. And it was, those conversations were really good. But still, you then have to get, the legals and the finances and all those things aligned, which take time. But having, a good idea of what it is that you want, and then having the right partner, but then also having made sure that the business has been run efficiently and effectively, so that an acquisition like that can go through and you can get the value that you would want, is something that, just because you're doing those things doesn't necessarily mean you're preparing to sell or anything like that. You never know when that opportunity is going to knock. But what you can do is always be kind of prepared, so that if it does, that you're in the best position to have those conversations. And when that happened with myself, and I was sitting down with people talking about it, was that my attitude was, having started a business, having never ran one before, and learning from that was, my attitude was, I don't know if I want to sell Red Kite, but I also don't know what it takes to sell a company. So let's at least talk about it, because if it doesn't happen in the end, I'll just be more informed as a person being able to run my business. So, I guess that's a bit of insight into that journey and what happened there, Jamie.
Oh, fascinating. I'm aware that we're sort of about half an hour in, so I've got quite a few more questions here. But if anybody's got any questions, you want to put your hand up, and we'll have yes. Yep. If you, have you got a mic? No, we don't have one. I think we're going to do old school. If you could just shout, and I'll basically repeat it on the mic so that the people watching on the stream can hear it as well.
I spent a lot of time working with combined authorities in West Yorkshire around getting new students into the games industry. And I guess I'm looking for advice from yourself on what advice can you give me that I can speak to the students that I speak to help them into the games industry. We touched a little on diversity, it is improving, but I do think there's more we can do there. So any advice would be really appreciated.
So it's advice to get how to get people into the industry, but also. But also like the combined authorities and the councils and the LEPs, and what do you say to them about getting people in the industry? What do you need? What do we need in the region, skills wise, and and help if we could get some funding for that? Because Gaming Public, we just recently ran a next level training scheme, which was taking people from a mid-level role to a senior role, and that was really great because there's a real gap in the industry for that kind of training. But is there anything else that we could help with?
It's an issue very close to my own heart. Coming from a disadvantaged background myself, I found it very hard to break into the games industry myself. I wanted to make it easier for folks in the area that we're living in Leeds and Bradford. So we've set up XR Futures, whereby it helps students and interns to get work experience and get work placements at XR Games. And it's an entire program aimed at schools and colleges and universities to help people to come in. So I direct them to that website, and it outlines, what it is you need to put in your CV, basic stuff such as CVs and cover letters, where you can reach out to, where you can get advice on how to get into the industry, the kind of things you need to learn. And we do an outreach program where we're going into schools and colleges in the local area as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's always more we can do, and I'm sure companies are getting involved and doing talks and things. Andrew?
Yeah, I was going to say that Jamie's probably too polite to say it, but I'd advise any universities, colleges to sign up to Game Republic, get involved in the student showcase. As the name suggests, it's a great way of getting your students' work out there, but it's also a good way of your students kind of seeing what they're up against and the talent that's coming through right now.
I think as well, part of the problem is I think that we need to go a bit further back in terms of the, when we engage with students to try and get them into games at a slightly younger age than we necessarily focus on at the moment. And that is really, really tricky. Red Kite, we've done numerous things where we always encourage like our employees, if they get the opportunity to go and speak at their senior school or things like that, or the secondary school and their colleges, to go and do it, because I think at university level, I don't think things are necessarily terrible. Of course, things can be improved, but I think that's where the challenge is. And these two things that pop into my head. I know that at Red Kite we're part of the Ahead partnership, which again that focuses very much on that younger age group and trying to encourage both just people from backgrounds that wouldn't necessarily get those opportunities and encouraging them, but then also they're running events like Girl Tech and things like this to push girls into digital opportunities and things like that as well. And so there are things going on. I think what Andrew's mentioning there is that I think some schools and colleges, it's like, well, where do they go to actually know that these things are happening, which is the tricky aspect. I wouldn't say I have an answer to that, but I think that that's part of the question that needs answering, is how do we better kind of get visibility on those things so that happens and is improved. But I think that Game Republic, they get involved in various things that help with that. But yeah, I think within the region of talking about the North and Yorkshire and further afield as well, is trying to come together and answer that question a little bit better. And part of it is even encouraging parents to understand that these things are happening and that video games is a very viable career.
Yeah, I mean, we've got like National Video Game Museum in Sheffield, which is doing some fantastic stuff around with kids and workshops. We've got Yorkshire Games Festival, which happens at the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford, and they have a schools day there as well, and we get BAFTA involved, and BAFTA obviously have young game designers and things like that. But I think there's a lot more we can do. I mean, my daughter is 14, and she had boys at school saying, "What, you play games? What, you're a girl. What are you playing games for?" And I heard that like 30 years ago, and I thought we'd kind of got past that, but there's still a lot of work we need to do to go into schools and sort of say, look, there are brilliant women in games having a fantastic career, and I think there's a lot more we can do, definitely. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so it seems so far that there's a lot of disconcerting comments about finding funding. I work at a university, but we're also starting a company that's only meant to be a step up for students and grads to actually get their first work experience. How do we, or the students that we try to incubate, even compare to, like yourselves, if you're going for the same funding pots? How do we stand out? How do we give students and alumni the tools to be able to be in those situations to be competitive if we've got people like yourselves and Thunkd that are obviously going to be a lot more enticing for those investors?
Yeah. So the question is, you basically at a university, you're setting up a studio for students to go into, and you want to look for funding for that. And it's like, how do you compete with other games companies? I mean, we have a couple in the region actually, that a couple of universities that do that. Huddersfield have a studio that they're attached to the university, where students can go and learn a bit more about being in the business. And there's Sheffield Kelham as well has Canalside Studios. But I mean, what does the panel think about that and getting students the experience, and how would they go about getting funded for that? Is it doable, that sort of model?
From my perspective with that, it'd be interesting to know what the funding is that is being talked about here, because I think that I'm not necessarily aware of that would successfully provide enough funding to do what you were asking for anyway. I think funding to generally help get prototypes off the ground or things like that. I mean, unless you're talking about kind of, for examples like what Bobby was talking about, is in this being something where someone's going to invest in it because there's potential for a return of investment on it. Now, I don't know if that's, because it sounds to me like really what you're wanting to do is create an experience. It isn't necessarily about this thing making money. It's more about providing an opportunity for these students to then get, you know, this real game development experience. And maybe I could be wrong with that.
Primarily on my part, yes, but we also have to think about individuals that want to integrate their companies that are going to want to go and make money. Not necessarily saying we don't want to make money, but we've got to think of both sides of that coin. Really, is that we've got to think about getting going, but we've got to think about continuing to keep going.
You talk about individuals within, you know, the kind of incubator that would be coming up with games. I mean, we see some amazing games coming through the student showcase, and a couple of the student teams that we saw this year were really delighted by, you know, with winning awards and getting, you know, like Simon at Red Kite was giving out awards for game tech and stuff, and they were thinking, actually, I think we can make a business out of that. And that's where they get the support from, like Gamma.io, and get the contacts and things in to find the publishers and people that will support them. But it'll still be tough, because getting funding is tough, and it's often easier for people with a track record that have been in the industry a few years and made those connections with publishers and things that are trusted that can get that funding. I mean, Andrew, what would you say about this?
So I think we've already established that I'm not the business person on this panel. But I think whenever I talk to students, there's kind of two directions they can go. They can try and fit into the industry, or they can try and sort of reimagine see, I went to art school, and our thing was that we kind of not disregard everything that previous generations would do, but we'd strive to do our own thing. And I think games is a little bit conservative in that, you know, people are playing GTA today. People were playing GTA 15 years ago, which, you know, is fine for people of our age. But I think I could go off on one here, but I think younger generations should be trying to reimagine what games should be for them. And that's how they don't have to worry about competing with us, because an old git like me can't imagine what is something new and fresh to them. But that's a hugely risky thing to do. You know, they can shape themselves to fit directly into a company that already exists, or they can, you know, do their own thing that people like me, you know, could never imagine.
I hope that helps to answer your question. We've got a few minutes left, so I just quickly want to ask the panel about what is the best thing about being in the games industry? What, you know, kind of gets you out of bed in the morning? Bobby?
Good question. For me, it's when the day comes when the game launches, and if it's critically well received and the reviews are amazing and it's selling really well, that moment for your game studio is absolutely amazing. It absolutely galvanizes everyone in the studio. It makes you forget about all the problems that you faced, that you encountered and you've overcome. Because when you see the reviews come in and people are extremely happy about playing your game, it shows that you've succeeded. Because as a game developer, you know, I see it as we're making art to give people joy. And when you succeed with that, it's an amazing feeling. It's second to none. And to have brought up all your staff with it and they experience that is just absolutely amazing. And, you know, that's what makes it super special for me, for sure.
Yeah. Elaine?
I would say is that every day I talk to new studios and just seeing the variety of games, how creative they are and how different. And you're like, wow, that's such a great idea. I wish I had thought of that. And I feel like there's a game for everyone out there, no matter what you play. And, you know, back to Andrew's point about making games for, you know, I've got a 7-year-old daughter and she plays games as well, and sometimes gets that whole girls playing games stuff still. But like, she's talking about designing games and she wants to like look at that. And that's like, she's the future. She'll be designing games for what she's interested in that's different. But,
absolutely.
So the creativity and just the variety I love.
Yeah. Simon?
For me, it's just the people that I get to work with, both inside Red Kite and outside of Red Kite, you know, from UK across the whole world, the people that I've got to meet, you know, there's such creativity in the games industry, and it's just full of lovely people. So anybody who is just starting out or not quite sure or doesn't want to, you know, he's a bit worried about having that conversation or going to say hello to that person, just go and do it. I think, yeah, for me, it's that, you know, I've been in games for about 17 years now, and I've made so many good friends. And, you know, making games for the most part should be fun, but a big part of that is the people that you're making them with. And, you know, it's a fact of life that you generally spend more you generally spend more time with people at work than you do with the people at home. So you best make sure you're working with people you want to be with.
Good point. Jess?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo what you've been saying. The people in the games industry that I've worked with over the years have kept me around in the games industry.
Yeah.
And equally, it's what we're creating, like those possibilities, the worlds, the shoes that you can get put in, terrifying players if you want to. It's those possibilities. It's special. What we can do.
And Andrew?
Yeah, it's a similar thing. It's all the people I've met along the way. Still love meeting new people, hearing what they're up to. And then day to day, I'm still on the coalface of making stuff. And I just love having to learn new things and getting tripped up by things and then having to figure it out. And it's like all those little highs and lows of failure and success. And I just love it.
Brilliant. Well, it's been really fantastic today talking to the panel. I think a big round of applause for our panelists, Bobby, Elaine, Jess, Andrew and Simon. Thank you to Develop Brighton for giving us this opportunity to celebrate our 20th anniversary, and for you all for coming along today. Thank you for staying right to the end for Game Republic. If you want to check out more features on our panelists, we've got on our website a feature bit called Northern Lights, and you can read interviews with everyone and a few more people from the region as well, gamerepublic.net. And we have a feature in MCV Develop this month, which you might see around the place as well, so grab one of those. But thanks everyone, have a brilliant rest of Develop. Cheers.
Thank you.